When was the last time that you read a Catholic book? What was it? Did you like it? Was it fiction or non-fiction? Did you purchase it or did you go to the library? Did you download it? Those are all questions that we'd like you to ponder as we delve into the world of Catholic publishing. But we begin with a more fundamental question.
The last time I bought a book was when I was traveling, about a year ago. But mostly I just do ebooks or read stuff off of Twitter or articles and things like that.
Last time I bought a book was probably a month ago. I don't think they're ever going to really go out. People are going to want the old ones, classics still. But newer books, I like to buy on my iPad.
Oh yeah, I read a lot of everything's online that I read pretty much now that I think about it.
Oh, I read all books and all newspapers, especially newspapers around the world. We're in the 21st century. It's time to get with it.
I actually still buy my books. I go to used bookstores most of the time. And yeah, I just like the smell of books and the feel of books, so I don't think online sources replace that.
I get books from the library. I don't bother buying them. I figure that's a more efficient way. Saves paper.
Yeah, I do a lot of more reading online because like when I go away for work, the most accessible thing with me is my laptop, so ebooks, things like that.
I think newspapers are going to disappear, but books will never disappear.
Well, it's good to know that some people still read. Those were some people on the streets in Vancouver. Now, joining me for this discussion are two people who are no strangers to reading or to publishing. Joseph Sinasac, he's the publishing director of Novalis, and with him is Suzanne Spino. She's the president of Bayard Canada. Welcome both.
Thank you.
So what is your sense? Do people still read?
Do people still read? That's a rather fundamental question for us.
It
right?
is, don't you think?
Yes. In fact, it's a question we ask when we do focus groups, which we do from time to time. And it was a particular question I asked not too long ago, and we did a focus group of some pastors, some catechists, there was a bishop, and I asked people, I said, do you read, when do you read, and how do you read? And the answer is yes, they read. It's no doubt about it, they read, but they read in very different ways than we traditionally think of. Many of these people are highly educated and they have very busy lives. They are not sitting down in the sofa at night with a book too often. Many of them are reading, if we could say that, by listening to audiobooks.
Oh,
when they're in the car.
Yeah.
Particularly in a big commuting town like Toronto, they have a lot of time they spend in cars, and so they're listening to books.
Yeah.
Others are downloading articles from various sources.
Right.
And yes, there are still people who will read a print book.
Yeah, right. Now, Suzanne, I know that Bayard publishes quite a few magazines, some that are not even what I would call Catholic, but do you find that people are more prone, this is maybe not a fair question, but more prone to read magazines or newspapers rather than books?
Well, magazine reading is actually a reading that is different from book reading. And what we try to do, because we also publish magazines for the youth, and we find that boys especially are magazine readers better than book readers.
It's true, it's true.
But that's general, it's not always true.
When I was growing up, I have to tell you a little story. When I was growing up, I had an uncle, he was a teacher, and he would, every time I saw him, he'd say, "What book are you reading?" And I would always feel like I was caught like a deer in the headlights. And then my dad one day pulled me aside, because I guess he'd been watching me, and said, you know, the fact that you're not reading a book doesn't mean that you're not reading, because I subscribed to World Magazine and I read National Geographic. And he said, well, tell him that. And I thought, so it's very true that my two boys subscribe to Owl Magazine, and I'm not sure what the other one is, but yeah. Chickadee, yeah, that's right. And they read. So books, magazines, newspapers, the sense is that people are, whether they're downloading them or listening to audio tapes, that they're still consuming.
They are still consuming, they're still reading in different ways and for different purposes. Not just entertainment. They're reading because they need certain amounts of information for whatever they're doing in their lives.
So let's then look at specifically the world, I guess, of Catholic publishing that both of you work in. People are not reading for entertainment. Would you say that the books and magazines that you're publishing that are Catholic, and we'll get to that question, that people are reading for entertainment, or is it more for nourishment?
Maybe I can start first. I mean, the magazines that we publish on the Catholic side are really magazines that serve needs. For instance, we have the Living with Christ missalette. So you're in church, you read the missalette. You have the Living with Christ and you read it. So it serves a need, which doesn't mean that you can't read it on your own at home.
No, and a lot of people do, yeah.
And a lot of people do. But firstly, that's what it's for. And a lot of the magazines that we do this way are to serve needs. On books, on the other hand, are a different story, because then you can certainly talk to the individual. But we also publish resource books, and those are also different. They're in between a magazine and in a book, in as much as they are tools to help you develop your spiritual needs, your spiritual life.
Well, but maybe I should ask the question, which is what makes, you know, we've been talking about Catholic publishing, so what is Catholic publishing? What makes a book Catholic?
Oh boy, that's a big question. I'm going to divide it up between big C Catholic publishing and then small c Catholic publishing. Because big C Catholic publishing is publishing that is very clearly focused on the needs of the Catholic world. Books that are used by Catholic institutions are people who are seeking specific information or nourishment.
Like theology of the body.
Theology of the body, spiritualities. You want to know about the spirituality of Therese of Lisieux or Catherine of Siena. That to me is big C Catholic publishing. And that is what we do. We're there to help people find ways of slaking their thirst for spiritual enlightenment, spiritual knowledge, that kind of thing. Small C Catholic publishing is publishing that I would say comes out of a Catholic mindset, and it could be fiction. I think of Morris West, you know, Shoes of the Fisherman. I think of J.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings. G.K. Chesterton, the Father Brown stories. You know, that are entertaining, good literature, but they clearly come from a Catholic way of looking at the world.
So just because a book is written by a Catholic doesn't make it Catholic?
Not necessarily. We're in murky waters here. Right?
No, I know. No, I guess that what I'm getting at is, as publishers, both of you, you have a relationship with the authors.
That's right.
So do you call, I don't know, an author and say, hey, would you be interested in writing this book because we have this need? Or do you have the author coming to you and saying, hey, I want to write a book about Saint Therese. Would you be interested in publishing it? Does it work both ways?
Absolutely. And it works in a third way as well. But first of all, we will identify a need for a book. We know many science teachers in Catholic high schools are looking for ways to address how faith and science interact. So we are going to do a book on faith and science.
Interesting.
And we will pull together the writers that we know have the expertise to address those questions. That's one way. Another way is Catholic writers submit proposals to us. And the way we're doing this is familiar with Catholic publishers all around the world. There's nothing unique about us in that regard. So we will get submissions from writers. The third way is there are writers that just are a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and can write to a huge audience. Jean Vanier, Ron Rolheiser, the late Henry Nouwen, you know, and it almost doesn't matter what subject they tackle. You'll know that they will tackle it with a profound spiritual understanding of the world. And you might just go and say, can you write us a book?
Right, exactly. Now, just again, to stick to the same question, what makes a book Catholic? And I completely understand and agree your response there. We posted this question on Facebook and got a whole ton of ideas, including the Bible. But someone mentioned Four Loves by C.S. Lewis, who's not a Catholic. But a lot of people would think because he's got all these Christian themes. So would that fall under your big C or little c or different C?
If you read the Four Loves and you didn't know that C.S. Lewis was not Catholic,
you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't guess that.
Okay, that's fair.
So to me, I would say that's a big C Catholic book.
Okay, so.
It's funny because one of our bestsellers on the French side, but we've also translated him, is John Montbourquet, who really writes self-help books. Now, are these Catholic books? Or they're written by priests. He's a priest, but he's also studied in psychology. So, and these books are how to get over death and the dying of a loved one. So, Joe, would you think it's a Catholic book?
Absolutely.
You would.
Because he's a priest, and because he's probably coming at it from.
There's a spiritual side to it.
There's a spiritual side.
Okay. Yeah. What about a book that, let's say, a novel that takes place in the Vatican or takes place in the church, but it's not necessarily, like, it deals with Catholic themes, but it's not there for any particular, it's just there for entertainment.
Like Dan Brown's novels?
Well, I wasn't going to bring up Dan Brown. I was actually thinking, or like The Bishop's Man by Lyndon McIntyre.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I mean, Dan Brown's novels, I would not call Catholic novels. There's not a Catholic mindset at work. I mean, they're fast-paced adventure stories, what I call airport reading.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the facts are wrong. Most of the facts are wrong.
Yeah, half made up and half not, and all pulled together in these crazy stories. But they are compelling reading, and they're set in the Vatican or using Catholic characters. Yeah, but I wouldn't call that Catholic literature.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So before we take a break, quickly, what is your favorite Catholic book?
Oh man, let me just pick one that I've read recently.
Okay.
David Adams Richards, who is a Canadian, New Brunswick writer, novelist, practicing Catholic. The most recent one I read was called Friends of Meager Fortune, and it is not about Catholics per se. There's no church involved, but it comes out of a very Catholic understanding of humanity, of the fallen nature of man, of the ability for redemption and forgiveness.
Okay.
And you read that book, and as a Catholic, you understand exactly where he's coming from.
Okay, good. Suzanne, favorite Catholic book?
I'm going to go really way up the other stream, and I'm going to talk about Pope Benedict's Light of the World. I've just read this book, and actually it's not written by Pope Benedict. It's a journalist who's actually interviewing Pope Benedict and giving the responses in there. But I found that very enlightening, and you see Pope Benedict as somebody, as a man, as a human being, who is almost surprised that he's been chosen as Pope, but has thought about all these things in the Christian church, in the Catholic church specifically, and how he should communicate that to the people, and I found that fascinating.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, good book. Good choice. Good choice. I'll have to look up yours. We're going to take a little break, but it's a short break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to look specifically at some of the challenges that come with Catholic publishing, so don't go anywhere.
Let us know your perspective. Email us at perspectives@saltandlighttv.org or reach us by mail. Perspectives at Salt and Light Television, 114 Richmond Street East, Toronto, Ontario, M5C 1P1, or call us toll-free at 1-888-302-7181. Let your perspective be heard.
Thank you for tuning into Daily Mass. Do you subscribe to Living with Christ yet? This monthly missal can be your own little spiritual companion, with complete daily scripture readings, reflections and prayers, hymns, calendar of saints, and much more. If you would like to receive the Living with Christ missal, call 1-800-387-7164 or visit novalis.ca for subscription information.
Abonnez vos enfants à nos magazines. Vous leur donnerez le goût de lire et d'apprendre tout en s'amusant. Pour plus d'informations, visitez notre site magasinebayard.ca.
Of course, most of us are familiar with Living with Christ, the Missal publication, which is, I'm sure, one of the biggest...
most widely distributed sort of worship aids.
Worship aid. It's a worship
Canada.
aid. And you mentioned it earlier. people don't just use it. I'm one of those people that read it in the morning. I'll read it. Maybe I don't go to Mass, but I'm reading the readings, and I find that very useful. The second promo that we just saw was a Bayard promo in French for some of your youth magazine publications. And I wanted to ask you, Suzanne, how large, I guess, piece of the Bayard puzzle in Canada are the magazines or the youth magazines? Because again, sorry, we mentioned Owl Magazine and Chickadee, which I would not consider Catholic.
Actually, the youth section and the religious sections are two distinct sections at Bayard. So, no, the magazines, I wouldn't consider them Catholic per se. Obviously, they have human values interwoven in all their content. And so we have, yes, Chirp, Chickadee, and Owl on the English side, but we also have French magazines, and that's the promo you've probably seen. And that's Les Débrouillards, Les Explorateurs, Pomme d'Api, and J'aime lire. And again, these are books to help children learn and love to read. And it's been a hard thing to install, just because this subscription for children educational magazine wasn't really there before. But they're making inroads, and the classes and the schools just love them.
Well, is one of the challenges the fact that you have to keep? See, I would think that magazines are a good thing because people subscribe, and it's monthly income, I guess, as opposed to a book, which might be a one-time purchase. So do you find that that's one of the challenges that you know, having to come up with? I hate to put it in these terms, but things that people have to consume.
I think magazines, you develop a long-term relationship with your readers. It's not just a one-off purchase. It can be a lifetime commitment.
Yes.
And the readers, for instance, of Living with Christ and Prion are the most loyal readers you could imagine.
Yes.
They love those publications. They need them, because for their own daily spiritual lives, they use those publications. And if we make changes, we have to be very careful about the changes we make.
Right.
And they have lots to say about that.
Right.
And I think you'd find the same thing with the youth magazines.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
Except for the youth magazine, of course, their lifelong subscription don't last a lifetime.
Right, because they grow.
That's right.
I've been a subscriber to the Catholic Digest for 20 years or so, and that's a magazine that has gone through some changes, but I find that actually I still enjoyed it in my early 20s. I still enjoy it. It's owned by Bayard.
Catholic Digest belongs to Bayard USA in the US, yes.
So there isn't an equivalent, although they have Canadian subscribers, but there's no type of equivalent. What are the benefits? Again, I hate to put it in this terms, but the benefits of having a magazine like that as opposed to a magazine like Celebrate, which is more of a resource.
There are two different magazines. I mean, the Celebrate will go to the people in the parish and the people around the parish. Catholic Digest is a consumer magazine, so it's general interest, and it's aimed at everybody.
And a lot of people who are not Catholic read it.
Absolutely, that's true.
Okay, so here's the other question. So in terms of the mission, is your aim to nourish people, to evangelize, to help them, all of the above?
All of the above. I don't think you can separate them out. And I mean, while our core mission is to people who are Christians and who have an obvious interest in Christian traditions, it could be any spiritual seeker.
So even if it's not, even if it's fiction, you don't do...
Well, you know, for us, we don't do fiction.
Right.
So, not really. And so, really, we're doing more nonfiction in terms of spiritual nourishment or else catechetical teaching and that kind of thing. But they also, in a way, they help define a Catholic world. Like something like Catholic Digest. At one time, if you were an American Catholic, you received Catholic Digest, and that was just part of how you marked your existence or defined your existence, along with the crucifix on the wall. In Canada, it was the crucifix in the Catholic Register.
Right.
You know, the same way. Those were some of the markers of who you were as a Catholic person living in a society in which not everyone around you is Catholic.
Right.
And so, in a way, that's one of the roles those publications play.
Now, would you say that with the changing face of publishing, that those, you know, people might still have the crucifix on the wall, but now they have an iPad?
That's true.
So does that pose some challenges for you?
It does, and it will eventually, but we're a bit lucky in as much as the iPad. We haven't been reading the Missalette or the Living with Christ. I don't think a lot of people have been reading that on the iPad yet. Although we are thinking of making an app now for Living with Christ. Hopefully by the end of next year it'll be ready.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's not the most popular iPad reading right now. But eventually, yes, we'll have to look at that.
I think you find the church as a whole has been slower to adopt new technologies than, say, the public at large.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to be too far ahead of the church. So we are going to continue to have to provide the kinds of resources they're used to getting. And as demand picks up for more digital resources, we'll have to provide those. And so we're already working on an app. We're in discussions with people who do smartboard type products for the schools. We're doing ebooks, and we're getting into ebooks in a couple different formats because there will be people who will want to have the content delivered in those media.
Is that part of, again, looking at your mission, is that part of what is the best way to deliver a message? And whether it's a magazine, it's not the same as a hardcover book, it's not the same as a booklet with a leader's guide, is not the same as an app.
That's right.
Father Gay, who was the founder of Novalis, actually called the Catholic Center at the time, his main aim, and we're still aiming for that, is to get to the most numerous people, to as many people as he could. So whether it's through magazines, whether it's through pamphlets, brochures, books, iPads, apps, we'll do that.
Just to give people nourishment.
That's right.
Yeah, and you've been doing it for 75 years.
75 years.
That's amazing.
Well, it's also old for a publisher.
It's very old.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, how many changes have you gone through in the last 75 years?
We haven't been there for 75 years, sorry. But
even Bayard by itself has been there for a long time.
Actually, Bayard, which is also owned by a religious community called the Assumptionists, has been there. The French company has been there since 1873.
Yeah,
and we've been here since 1991 in Canada. And Novalis has been there since 1936.
I guess as long as people need to be fed.
Well, and right from the beginning, it was responding to a need.
Yeah.
The need was there, and Novalis had a particular way of approaching that need, and it was like providing very practical resources in a very economical way that could reach a mass audience.
Yeah. And you're doing that, and you're doing it very well. We have to end the conversation there, but hopefully the discussion can continue. It'll continue on Facebook, facebook.saltandlighttv.org. You can visit them online at novalis.ca and bayardcanada.ca. We're going to conclude our conversation by reflecting on a scripture passage. We always leave the last word to the one who is the Word. And this is a passage from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 and 9. Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. So again, that is from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. Joe?
Let me start with just the first part, because it strikes me that really reflects the world we live in today. And Novalis has spent 75 years presenting the Christian story to the world and the best of our traditions to the world. We now live in a very multicultural, multi-faith, multi-technological world, and we have to recognize in that world that there is beauty and truth and goodness, and be able to recognize those things and embrace those things that represent the same kinds of values that we are representing as well through our Christian tradition.
I just think that it's aimed at us. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me. For 75 years, that's what we've been doing, and we hope to do it for at least another 75 years.
And you have been doing a great job. Thank you both. We've been speaking with Joseph Sinasac. He's the publishing director at Novalis, and Suzanne Spino. She's the president at Bayard Canada. You can visit them online at novalis.ca and bayardcanada.ca. And you can also visit us online if you want to watch this episode or any of our archived episodes at saltandlighttv.org/perspectives. That's all for tonight. We'll see you next week.